Hey, I'm Alex Ratcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Flourish from Starling Games, a drafting, scoring game of gathering a bunch of cards, laying them out into your garden, and trying to score as many points as possible across 4 rounds. The basic idea of the game is that you're going to have your hand of cards. You're going to have your 6 cards over here, and you're going to take your cards, and you're going to be putting some cards into your own personal garden, and then giving cards to your neighbors on your left and your right. So I might go ahead and look at my hand over here, and I'll play... Ooh, that's not a bad card. I'll go ahead and play this into my garden and then hand this card over to my neighbor on my left and this card to my neighbor on my right. I'm also going to get cards from them, which I'm going to simulate because I don't actually have them here. So I have the cards that they handed me. Ooh, these are very helpful. And then I'll draw a card from the top of the deck. So I'm slowly adding more cards into the game. You're going to rinse and repeat for the first 3 cards, and that's going to be round 1. So let's go ahead and add another card out. Let's go ahead and put this card out, and we'll put this card to my neighbor on my left, this card to my neighbor on my right. And then again, they hand me cards, and I'll go ahead and draw a card. This is going to be repeating, everyone laying out their own gardens, everyone putting out their own rows of cards. And then for the next card, I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and add one more card over here. I'm going to add this one, and then let's go ahead and score the round. You see, after you play 3 cards, you're going to score the round, scoring specifically for the top section of each card. The cards have a few different things going on. The left side of each card are the various symbols you're going to be checking for, both at the end of the round and at the end of the game. The top section of each card, which only really has over there, is going to give you the point scoring for the round, and then at the end of the game entirely, you'll score for the bottom section of the cards as well. So in this case, over here, this tells me that I'll score 1 point for every single rows at the end of the round. In this case, I have 7 points over there. Let's go ahead and rotate my dial up to 7. And that's basically round 1. And we're going to continue doing that for the next 3 rounds, although the 4th round is a little different the way it plays out. So I'm going to go ahead and draw up a card, like I said already, and then start putting more cards down. I'll put this card down over here. I'll pass cards to my left and my right. Let's pretend they handed me back a card from over here. I got another card over there, and then I draw back up. And let's put down another card. This looks like a good card for, okay, great. I probably have more roses than the players to my left and my right. I'll explain that in a second. And then again, passing cards to my left and right, getting cards from them. Again, just in case you're going through this, I'm drawing cards from the top of the deck, but I'd be getting cards from my neighbors, only refilling 1 card from the top of the deck each round. And then lastly, let's go ahead and put this one out over here. Honestly, this is a very rose-heavy hand. I'm leaning very heavily into that, even though there's a whole bunch of other symbols and different things you can score for. But we're at the end of round 2. Let's go ahead and score for that. This will give me a point for every one of those and those in terms of the flowers over there. This gives me 6 points if I have more roses than the player to my left or my right. And this will give me, again, a point for every rose over there. And so, over here, not roses, by the way, whatever these are called. But over here, we're going to ignore this point scoring symbol because it's already from a prior round. So we're only going to score the new end of round cards, although we will take into account the symbols from your other end of round cards. So in this case, I have 2 points for every symbol. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's going to be 16 points, plus another 6 over here is 24 points added to my 7, bringing me to 31 points at the end of round 2. We're going to repeat that for round 3, doing the exact same sequence of play. And then in round 4, we're going to not draw up cards at the end of every round. Rather, we'll take our hand of cards, our hand of 5 cards that are left over at the end of round 3, and immediately play down 3 of them into our garden, finishing it off with 12 total cards. Once again, in Flourish, you're going to be grabbing cards, you're going to be playing cards into your own garden, you're going to be scoring for end of round, you're going to be scoring for end of game, you're going to be passing cards to your neighbors to your left and your right, you're going to be drawing up cards from the deck as well to slowly fill out your hand, doing that for 12 total plays, divided up into 4 rounds, and that is the game. Now there are some extra expansion modules in play, and some of the things over here are from the deluxe edition of, you can find the signature edition from Kickstarter, some of these extra components that you'll see, but there are some extra modules over here that we'll go over briefly what they do. Primarily, the 2 main gameplay editions are going to be a set of goal cards you can gather that will give you extra reasons to go for certain sets of cards. You'll gather a goal card, and these will give you extra points for collecting certain things. So same basic gameplay is still in play, but you have a driving force, a motivator, something that differentiates yourself as you start the system. And then secondly, and more interestingly, we have these over here, these little landmark cards that will be going down onto various cards, rewarding you for adjacencies. If I go ahead and lock this down over here, I'll be scoring points for the various symbols on the card on the card itself that match it, as well as the cards adjacent to it, which gives you a bit of another mechanic to be mindful of as you place these down. At the end of once per round, you can go ahead and place one of those down onto your board to start locking in those extra points. Some of the end game scoring stuff we haven't really talked about over here. Same basic concept over here. You're going to look at a symbol, this one gives us 4 points for every pathway with, well, those carnations, the red flowers, And so over here, you're going to get 8 points for these over here. This one will score 2 points for every beehive of my neighbors to my left and my right, and the same thing over here for every castle wall symbol over there for my neighbors to my left and my right. So there is a degree of being mindful of your neighbors as you go through the system, and that basically is Flourish. Pretty simple base game, some pretty simple modules, and that's the game experience. As far as ease of play, rules are a few pages long, even with the expansion rules, really not a lot. This is a very easy game to learn, it's a very easy game to teach. The game time is going to be roughly 30 to 60 minutes, I would say. At lower player counts, you're going to find yourself closer to the 30-minute mark, and if you have the full complement of 7 players, you're hard stretched to find yourself hitting that hour, but you might come closer to it. Table space does get a bit unwieldy at higher player counts. If you have 7 players trying to put down 4 cards per row, 3 cards per row, 4 rows deep, that's 12 cards per player. That's going to be 84 cards. Am I doing that right? 7 times 4. That sounds 7 times 12. That sounds right. 84 cards on the table. That is a lot of cards when you have the full complement of players. But if you're playing it at 3, 4, whatever it is, it's significantly easier to manage. So just factor in higher player counts does get a bit unwieldy as far as table space. As far as player count, it's a 1 to 7 player game. I've played this one at 4, 5, and 7 players. It works decently at all player counts so far, or at least all the ones I've tried it at. Because of the nature of the drafting, where it's not pure drafting, but rather passing cards to your player on your left and your right, it does mean that I don't really care about the players on the other side of me. I'm kind of playing my own game, being a little bit mindful of what these people are doing over here, but not really caring about the players across the table from me. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, Flourish is okay. There's a few things going on here that are enjoyable. The basic scoring, the genre of point scoring combos in games is something that I tend to appreciate and enjoy regardless of what game I'm playing. The idea of being mindful of trying to score for different things, of throwing some extra symbols into my garden, of trying to be mindful of collecting these sets of cards, of getting a variety of cards that interplay off one another, those things I generally like, and this game does have that to a degree. The balance of the end of round versus end of game scoring, trying to be mindful as you build out a tableau, trying to be mindful of building out a core foundation that will reward you in subsequent rounds as you build things out, versus getting in those early points because you have the right card. The mindfulness of passing cards to the players to your left and your right, trying to feed them things, especially when you're going to be scoring off the things that you feed them. There's definitely some strategy and some choices there. And the expansion modules do add some more interesting decisions. Not really this one. This one's just more of the same. It just gives you an extra starting card in that same sense. It's kind of like an end of round scoring, just at the beginning of the game. And so it's fine, but it's just more of the same. Versus these do give you a little bit of an extra element to be mindful of as you play, but it doesn't add that much complexity. I would never play the game without the expansions again. The game is simple enough and accessible enough, even with the expansions added. Playing without them would be too simple, not enough going on as far as the game. I've kind of run out of things I like over here because Flourish is a little underwhelming. Let's go ahead and get into the things that I don't like. The card distribution feels completely outside of my control, and this is a game where you don't have a full draft going on. You're passing cards to players to your left and your right, which also means that once you have dead cards, once you have cards that are not useful to the player to your left and your right, you may find yourself in a pattern where you're getting cards passed back and forth to the same players again and again and again. There's no real way of getting rid of cards, it's just, instead of dumping cards. So you're going to have that aspect to be mindful of, and you're only drawing 1 card per round, which is just not a lot of variety as far as adding more cards. If you don't get a good hand of cards, if you don't get a good combo, this combo over here is fantastic. Sometimes that happens. Other times it doesn't. Other times you don't get the cards you need, and you just have a mess of cards that don't really work together, and you don't have the agency or the control necessary to try to plan around that or mitigate around a bad combination of cards. And so that really doesn't work in a game that has little enough decision space to begin with, and then that extra dose of just randomness and sheer luck of the draw that goes on top of that. Can be heavily dependent on your neighbors with no real sense of control in the game. It's just not enough nuance to the experience that they're providing. They're providing you a bit of a point-scoring engine of trying to be mindful of, I'll score this, and I'll get that, and this card will help me score for those, and this card will give me endgame points. But the decision space is just very, very minimal. There's just not a lot of nuance. There's not a lot of times where you're like, ooh, this card's going to be this many points, and that card's going to be that many points. I mean, it generally comes down to just counting up points and going for that. Trying to pursue a variety of strategies. There's not a variety of strategies going on here. It's a lighter game. It gives you that point scoring fun, but without a lot of agency or mitigation around the luck aspects. As far as what I can see others not liking, not really a lot that I haven't covered. I think the core, well, let's go ahead and move straight to final thoughts, because I don't know if there's that much to cover with Flourish. Flourish was a letdown for me. It's a genre that I love in general, this point scoring aspect of games where you have a variety of things you're trying to be mindful of as you score for things, but it just doesn't give me the depth that I like with that experience. And coming from the designers of Everdell, which is, I mean, I love Everdell, it's a fantastic game, and having drafting, although it's not the kind of drafting I like, but it does have drafting in it, I kind of expected this to be a win for me. Between the art, the theme, the gameplay, the mechanisms, the designers, all those things, I expected Flourish to be a win for me, and possibly those expectations are biasing my thoughts and opinions around the game, but I just don't find it that rewarding. I find it to be another entry into the point-scoring genre, but one that doesn't feel as fleshed out as I would like, one that doesn't give me the decision space that I would like, the agency that I would like, and gives me a hefty dose of luck without having even enough significant card draw to give me interesting choices around, oh, what about this or that? You get a new card every turn. It's not enough mitigation around the game. Overall, this is one that, like I said already, was a letdown for me. Without the expansion, if I'm rating this game without the expansions, it would be a 2.5 out of 5. An okay foundation, but not one I really would want to play again. With the expansions, it does move it up a bit to a 3 out of 5. There's a little more going on. But even then, it's still a game that I find to be far more prettiness than any real substance behind it. A good... I wanted more from it. I wanted more from Flourish. I think that's where I end up with this one. Overall, as far as other game recommendations, I mean, 7-1 is going to be a classic in terms of games that play a variety of player counts, that are accessible, that give you a lot more things to consider, and yet still is just incredibly accessible as far as the core gameplay. Not a lot of depth in terms of the complexity, but a lot more depth in terms of the strategy. And then if you want something that leans more heavily into the plant genre in terms of scoring points with a variety of different scoring mechanisms going on, Verdant, which is a game that's not yet out, but coming to you from Flat Out Games, another game from the designers of Calico and Cascadia. Verdant will give you that gardeny, plants and everything else feeling with a lot more nuance as far as the decision spaces around how you're going to try to maximize your scoring. In any case, until next time, I hope you found this helpful. I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.